What if Portland's homelessness crisis is really a housing history problem? When people talk about homelessness in Portland, they usually focus on what they see right now. Mental illness, addiction, visible suffering, personal failure. Those explanations feel immediate, but they all assume the crisis began recently. What if it didn't? What if Portland's homelessness crisis is not the result of something that happened last year, or even in the last decade, but the delayed consequence of housing that was never built many years ago? For most of Portland's history, affordable housing was not something the city deliberately created. It wasn't a special program or a targeted development. It was simply older housing. Most people rarely lived in brand new buildings. They lived in homes that were new once, then gradually became less desirable as styles changed, neighborhoods evolved, and newer housing entered the market elsewhere. As those homes aged, they became affordable to the next group of lower-income residents. Economists call this process filtering. New housing usually starts expensive, but over time it creates space further down the housing ladder. That slow movement is how cities like Portland used to absorb growth without widespread displacement. But filtering only works if housing keeps getting built. In Portland, that process slowed dramatically for long stretches of time. Construction slowed during several recessions, but the downturn in the 1980s was especially severe and still shapes what we see today. During recessions, financing dried up and houses were not built. In addition, over time, zoning limited what could be built in large parts of the city. Nothing dramatic happened at first. The damage stayed invisible. Fast forward 30 or 40 years, and Portland began to feel the consequences. A generation of households went looking for older, naturally affordable housing, the kind that once existed, and discovered that enough of it was not there. Not because it had been demolished, not because it failed inspections, but because it was never built in the first place. That missing generation of housing created pressure that moved downward through the market. Middle-income households who once would have moved into older apartments or small rental homes were forced to compete for whatever housing still existed. When the Great Recession hit, construction slowed so sharply that many of the newer homes wealthier households would normally move into were never built at all. That lack of housing pushed rents higher and vacancies lower across the city. Lower-income households were squeezed first, then people living on fixed incomes, then people already one setback away from losing their housing. Eventually, there was nowhere left to move down. Doubling up stopped working. Temporary arrangements became permanent. Shelters filled. And homelessness became visible on Portland's streets. The people you see living outside are not the cause of Portland's housing crisis. They are the people with the least ability to survive a system that no longer has slack built into it. This is why homelessness in Portland often appears to be a mental health or addiction crisis. People with untreated illness or substance use disorders tend to have less income stability, fewer family fallback options, and fewer second chances when something goes wrong. When housing is plentiful, those vulnerabilities are often hidden. When housing is scarce, they are exposed. Housing scarcity does not create vulnerability. It reveals it. Building housing in Portland today will not instantly recreate the missing generation of homes that never existed. There is no way to compress decades of lost construction into a single policy cycle. But building now still matters. It prevents the next gap. Cities that make progress on homelessness over time tend to do several things at once. They allow more housing to be built across neighborhoods. They preserve older housing instead of losing it to disrepair or abandonment. They protect renters during transitions, and they provide targeted support for people at the bottom, where the consequences of scarcity hit first. Not because people are broken, but because the system was. Portland's homelessness crisis is not a mystery. It is the delayed echo of housing decisions made decades ago. And what the city chooses to build, or not build, now will determine who has a place to live 30 years from today. Housing is a long game. Portland is living in the middle of it.